The shuttle rocked violently as it entered the atmosphere of Delta 479. Staff Sergeant Eric Mason gripped the safety harness tighter, watching as the 50 elite soldiers around him braced themselves against the turbulence. Outside the viewport, swirling amber clouds sparked with electricity, occasionally illuminating the cabin with flashes of blue-white light. "Atmospheric entry in 30 seconds, announced the automated voice of the transport ship. "Prepare for landing procedures." Eric checked his gear one last time. His combat suit was standard Alliance issue, but he had made several modifications based on his 10 years of experience in the Special Forces. The extra padding at the joints, the reinforced neck seal, the additional knife strapped to his ankle, small changes that had saved his life more than once. "Nervous, human?" The question came from Krilgzar, the mission commander. The tall, gray-skinned alien looked down at Eric with 4 yellow eyes that blinked in alternating pairs. "Cautious," Eric replied. 3 failed expeditions to this planet. 0 survivors. Seems like we should be nervous." Krilgzar made a clicking sound that passed for laughter among his species. "This is why we bring humans. You evolved on a death world yourselves. Not as severe as this one, of course, but your primitive biology might actually be useful here." Eric said nothing. He had grown used to how the Alliance viewed humans. Tough, but expendable assets, perfect for dangerous deployments. Earth had joined the Galactic Alliance only 30 years ago, still newcomers compared to the ancient civilizations that dominated galactic politics. Across the shuttle, Naya Patel caught his eye. She was the mission's xenobiologist and the only other human assigned to the team. Her dark hair was pulled back in a tight bun, and her eyes reflected the same concern Eric felt. The shuttle shuddered again, harder this time. Something screeched against the outer hull. "What was that?" asked a nervous Ithri soldier, his crystalline body glittering with anxiety. "Likely an airborne predator," replied Lieutenant Aaron Collins from the security detail. "Intel says they're drawn to anything that moves through the upper atmosphere." The shuttle broke through the cloud layer, and for the first time they could see the surface of Delta 479. Vast oceans of deep purple stretched across the planet, interrupted by land masses, covered in rusty orange vegetation. The polar caps gleamed like burnished copper in the light of the system's yellow sun. "Beautiful," someone whispered. "So is a cobra," Eric muttered, "right before it kills you." The landing was rough but controlled. The shuttle touched down on a relatively flat plateau surrounded by jagged mountains that seemed to pierce the sky. The door hissed open, and a wave of hot, strange-smelling air rushed into the cabin. Eric was one of the first to step outside. The air was breathable. The science team had confirmed that. But it carried an astringent scent that made his eyes water. The gravity pulled at him, about 15% heavier than Earth standard. Around him, the other soldiers were adjusting to the conditions, some more easily than others. "Establish the perimeter," ordered Commander Krilgzar. "I want sensor posts at 50-meter intervals. Defense systems online within the hour. Mining equipment ready for deployment by nightfall." The team moved with practiced efficiency. Eric supervised the human contingent, setting up the eastern section of the perimeter. As he worked, he noticed something odd about the fern-like vegetation that covered the ground. When he moved, the plants seemed to sway toward him, despite the lack of wind. "You see that?" he asked Aaron, who was setting up a sensor post nearby. Aaron nodded. "They're tracking our movements, not normal plant behavior." "Nothing about this place is normal," Eric replied. "That's why we're here with guns instead of just sending in the mining drones. The Galactic Alliance wanted Delta 479 for its rare minerals. The planet was rich in quantum stabilizers, crucial components for faster-than-light travel. 3 previous attempts to establish mining operations had failed completely. Equipment destroyed, personnel lost, no survivors to explain. What went wrong? 2 hours into the setup, the first casualty occurred. A Draken scout named Velk brushed against a flowering plant while placing a sensor. The plant erupted in a cloud of microscopic spores. The reptilian soldier collapsed almost instantly, thrashing on the ground as the spores penetrated his scales. Eric rushed over with a medical kit, but it was too late. The spores were dissolving Velk from the inside, breaking down tissue at an alarming rate. Within minutes, the Draken was dead, his body already being absorbed by the surrounding vegetation. "Sterilize the area," Commander Krilgzar ordered, his voice tight. "Plasma weapons, full spread." The team complied, burning a 20-meter circle around the incident site. The plants withered and died under the intense heat, but not for long. By the time they had removed Velk's remains, new growth was already pushing through the charred earth. "The ecosystem is learning from us," Naya observed, taking samples with a remote collection drone. "These organisms share genetic material at a rate I've never seen before. The new growth is already showing resistance to heat." As the twin moons of Delta 479 rose in the sky, casting an eerie blue glow over the landscape, the team completed their base setup. Force fields hummed into place, creating a protective dome over their position. Automated turrets scanned the perimeter, programmed to target any biological entity larger than a small rodent. "You think we'll last longer than the other expeditions?" Naya asked Eric as they ate their evening rations inside the command center. "Maybe," he said. "We have better equipment, more soldiers, but something about this planet feels wrong. Like, it's watching us." Naya nodded. "The previous expeditions had better equipment and more troops too. Something on this world adapts to invaders. It's not just hostile, it's reactive." Night fell completely, and strange howls echoed from the nearby forest. The team's sensors detected multiple large organisms moving toward the camp. Eric checked his rifle and made sure his combat suit was sealed properly. "All personnel to defensive positions." Commander Krilzar's voice came through the comm system. "Unknown entities approaching from the north and west. Prepare for engagement." Eric took position at the eastern barrier, where the plateau dropped off into a steep valley. Below, he could see movement in the darkness, shapes flowing like liquid shadow between the alien trees. "Here they come," Aaron whispered beside him. The first wave of attackers burst from the forest edge. Creatures resembling a cross between wolves and mantises, with 6 limbs and exoskeletons that gleamed in the moonlight. They moved with frightening speed, leaping toward the perimeter barriers. The automated turrets opened fire, filling the night with flashes of energy weapons. Many of the creatures fell, but others seemed to shrug off direct hits, their exoskeletons partially deflecting the energy beams. "Adjust to physical projectiles," Eric shouted into his comm. "Energy weapons aren't fully effective." The night exploded into chaos as more creatures emerged from different directions. Some burrowed under the perimeter, others leaped over it. The team was forced into close-quarters combat as the attackers breached their defenses. Eric fired until his weapon overheated, then switched to his sidearm. Beside him, Aaron went down under a pile of the creatures, screaming as their mandibles tore through his combat suit. The battle lasted 3 hours. When morning finally came, 12 soldiers were dead, including Aaron and Naya. The survivors were exhausted, many wounded, and this was only the first night on Delta 479. Commander Krilgzar called Eric to the command center, where the alien leader was studying damage reports with a grim expression. "Staff Sergeant Mason," he said without looking up, "you are now the ranking human officer on this mission." Eric stared at him. "Sir, Lieutenant Collins is dead. Dr. Patel is dead. You're all that's left of your species on this planet." Krilgzar finally met his gaze. "And I fear that before this mission is complete, many more of us will join them." The morning after the first attack, Eric helped count the dead. 12 soldiers lost in one night. The bodies were already starting to break down, the planet's microbes working faster than any decomposers Eric had seen on Earth or other worlds. "We should burn them," suggested Olivia Winters, a combat medic who had been treating the wounded since dawn. Her blonde hair was matted with sweat and alien blood, her eyes tired but alert. "This planet will use them against us otherwise." Eric nodded. He had seen how quickly the vegetation had regrown after they burned it. The bodies would become food, and whatever came next would be stronger for it. Commander Krilzar approved the cremation. The remaining soldiers gathered to watch as their fallen comrades were reduced to ash by plasma rifles. Even the ashes were collected and stored in sealed containers. "No gifts for this world," Krilgzar said grimly. The mining operation began. That day, despite the losses, the Alliance wanted the quantum stabilizers, and the mission would continue until either success was achieved or everyone was dead. Huge drills dug into the rusty soil, while the remaining soldiers reformed their defensive perimeter, now smaller than before. Eric found himself working closely with the 3 Vespari warriors. The insect-like aliens communicated through a combination of clicks and pheromones, but they had translation devices that allowed them to speak the common language of the Alliance. "Your species fights well," said Zikra, the lead Vespari, as they reinforced the western barrier. "Most organics would have fled after what happened last night." "Humans are stubborn," Eric replied. "Sometimes too stubborn for our own good." The day passed without major incidents, but Eric noticed concerning changes in their surroundings. The vegetation near their camp was different now. Thicker stems, fewer flowers, more thorns. It was as if the plant life had adapted overnight to be less vulnerable to plasma weapons. By midday, the mining operation had extracted the first samples of quantum stabilizers. The blue-green crystals were carefully stored in shielded containers. Each one was worth more than Eric would earn in 10 years of military service. "At this rate, we'll meet the minimum extraction quota in 6 days, reported the chief engineer, a squat, gray-skinned alien named Gorv, assuming we survived that long. That night they were better prepared. The defensive perimeter had been strengthened, and they had adjusted their weapons based on what they learned from the first attack. But the planet had adapted too. The attack came not from the forest this time, but from beneath them. The ground itself seemed to come alive, splitting open to reveal burrowing creatures with acid-tipped claws. They melted through the base of the force field generators, causing sections of the protective dome to fail. "Shore up the southern perimeter," Eric shouted, firing his rifle at a creature that had nearly reached the command center. The bullet hit its eye, causing it to screech and fall back. Olivia fought beside him, using a modified stun baton that seemed effective against the burrowers. "They're targeting our technology," she yelled over the noise of battle. "Going after the generators first, then the mining equipment." She was right. The creatures ignored easier targets to attack critical systems. It was as if the planet understood exactly what to hit to cause the most damage. By morning, they had lost 5 more soldiers and 2 engineers. 3 of their 5 force field generators were destroyed, and one of the main mining drills had been reduced to a smoking ruin. "This planet is fighting us like it knows what it's doing," Eric told Commander Krilgzar during their morning briefing. "These aren't random animal attacks, there's a pattern." Krilgzar's 4 eyes blinked rapidly, a sign of stress in his species. "You suggest intelligence? Our scans show no signs of sentient life." "Not individual intelligence," Eric clarified. "Something distributed, like the planet itself is coordinating its response to our presence." The commander dismissed the idea, but ordered doubled guards on the remaining equipment. The mining operation continued with the 4 drills still functioning. They needed to extract as much as possible before the next attack. By the 5th day, the situation had grown worse. The atmosphere around their camp had changed, becoming more acidic. The soldiers now needed to wear filtration masks at all times. The water in nearby streams had become hostile too, hosting microscopic organisms that could penetrate standard filters. Eric found Olivia analyzing water samples in what remained of the science lab. Naya would have been doing this work, but now, the medic had taken over additional duties. "Anything useful?" Eric asked. Olivia shook her head. "The microbes in the water have changed their structure completely in just 48 hours. Our filters can't catch them anymore." She looked up at him, her face pale with exhaustion. "Eric, this isn't natural evolution. Nothing evolves this fast." "I know," he said. "The planet is responding to us specifically, learning from every encounter." Their conversation was interrupted by a scream from outside. They rushed out to find a soldier named Lara Peterson on the ground, her leg ensnared by a vine that hadn't been there minutes before. The plant was pulling her toward the forest edge, and 2 other soldiers were trying to cut her free. Eric grabbed a plasma cutter from a nearby toolbox and sliced through the vine. It writhed like a living thing, oozing a yellowish fluid that smelled like ammonia. Lara was free, but her leg was badly injured where the vine had wrapped around it. Get her to medical, Eric ordered, helping the other soldiers lift her. As they carried Lara away, he noticed dozens of similar vines growing toward their position from the forest edge. They hadn't been there that morning. He reported this new threat to Commander Krilgzar, who was now visibly concerned. The alien leader had lost much of his earlier confidence. The reinforcements from the Alliance won't arrive for another 14 days, Krilgzar said. We've lost 17 soldiers already. At this rate, he didn't need to finish the sentence. At this rate, no one would be alive when help arrived. That evening, they sent out drones to patrol the perimeter, hoping to spot threats before they reached the camp. The drones returned 3 hours later, but something was wrong with them. Their movements were erratic, and they refused to respond to commands. When the engineering team opened one up, they found something impossible. Organic material had grown inside the drone's circuitry, forming a kind of neural network that had overridden its programming. It's in our technology now, Olivia whispered to Eric as they watched the engineers destroy the compromised drones. The planet isn't just attacking our bodies, it's going after our machines too. Eric nodded grimly. And it's getting better at it. He looked out at the darkening landscape where new and strange plants were visibly growing, reaching toward their camp like hungry fingers. I think Delta 479 is just getting started with us. That night, no one slept well, even those not on guard duty. The sounds from the forest had changed, less random animal noises, more like a coordinated rhythm that pulsed through the ground itself. It was as if the entire ecosystem was preparing for something. Eric checked his weapons one last time before trying to rest. He couldn't shake the feeling that the planet was watching him, learning from him, preparing to eliminate him like it had eliminated every other human who had set foot on its surface. On the 6th day, something changed in the air. Eric woke to find a strange mist hanging over the camp, glowing with a faint blue light. He immediately put on his filtration mask and sounded the alarm. Everyone, masks on now, he shouted through the camp's communication system. Most of the soldiers responded quickly, but 3 of them were too slow. They breathed in the mist before getting their masks secured. Within minutes, the 3 affected soldiers, 2 Drakens and 1 Ithri, began to show disturbing symptoms. Their skin rippled as if something moved beneath it. The Ithri's crystalline structure began to cloud over with organic material growing inside. Olivia tried to help them, but it was already too late. Whatever was in the mist had gotten into their bodies and was changing them from inside. By noon, all 3 were dead, their bodies twisted into unrecognizable shapes. We need to burn the bodies immediately, Commander Krilgzar ordered, his voice shaking slightly. The commander had grown noticeably more anxious as the days passed, his earlier confidence completely gone. They had lost 20 soldiers now, nearly half their original force. The mining operation continued, but progress was slow. 2 more drills had broken down, leaving them with only 2 functioning units. We've extracted about 30% of our target, Gorv reported during the midday briefing. The engineer looked exhausted, his gray skin now pale and drawn. At this rate, we'll need another 10 days to meet the minimum quota. We don't have 10 days, Eric said plainly. At the rate we're losing people, we'll be wiped out before then. Krilgzar paced nervously. The Alliance needs these quantum stabilizers. The mission cannot fail. The mission has already failed, Eric replied, trying to keep his voice calm. We should focus on keeping the remaining team alive until the reinforcements arrive. The commander stopped pacing and stared at Eric with all 4 eyes. Are you suggesting we abandon the mining operation, human? I'm suggesting we prioritize survival over mining rocks, Eric said. He could feel the tension in the room rising. The remaining soldiers watched the exchange carefully. After a long moment, Krilgzar nodded. We will continue mining for 1 more day. Then we evaluate our position. That afternoon, Eric helped Olivia check their remaining medical supplies. Her hands trembled slightly as she counted packages of synthetic skin and antibiotics. You look like you could use some rest, Eric told her. Olivia gave him a tired smile. Not much chance of that on this planet. She closed a supply case and sighed. I keep thinking about something Naya said before she died. She believed the planet was more than just a hostile environment, that it might be a single organism in some way. Eric nodded. I've been thinking the same thing. The way it adapts, the way it targets specific weaknesses. It's too coordinated to be random evolution. And it's getting smarter, Olivia added. That miss this morning, it wasn't anywhere in our briefing materials. The planet created something new just for us. Their conversation was interrupted by a loud alarm from the perimeter. Eric rushed outside to find a new threat approaching from the east. Large, bulbous plants that moved on root-like tentacles. They advanced slowly but steadily toward the camp. When a Vespari soldier fired at one, the plant exploded, releasing a cloud of toxic spores that immediately corroded the soldier's exoskeleton. "Don't shoot them," Eric shouted to the others. "They explode when damaged." But it was too late. Several soldiers had already opened fire, causing multiple plants to detonate. The resulting spore cloud drifted toward the camp, forcing everyone to retreat inside the remaining shelters. By evening, they had lost 4 more soldiers to the plant attack. The defensive perimeter had been breached in several places, and they were forced to establish a tighter circle around the command center and remaining mining equipment. "We need to call off the mining operation now," Eric told Krilzar bluntly. "We don't have enough people left to both mine and defend ourselves." This time, the commander didn't argue. With only 23 soldiers remaining, they shut down the mining operation and focused entirely on defense. The quantum stabilizers they had already collected were carefully stored in the command center. That night, Eric couldn't sleep. He sat near the entrance of his shelter, rifle ready, listening to the sounds of the planet. The rhythmic pulses had grown stronger, almost like a heartbeat that vibrated through the ground beneath them. Olivia joined him, sitting close in the darkness. "Do you think anyone will make it off this planet alive?" she asked quietly. "Yes," Eric replied with more confidence than he felt. "Humans are stubborn, remember?" She smiled faintly at that. "I've noticed." After a pause, she added, "There's something I've been working on. A theory about the planet's central nervous system, if it has one." She showed him data she had collected from soil samples. "See these patterns? They're consistent across all our testing sites. I think there's a network of fibers running through the entire planet, connecting everything, plants, animals, microbes, like a vast brain." "If you're right," Eric said, "could there be a way to communicate with it? To make it understand we're not a threat?" Olivia shook her head. "I don't think it cares what we intend. To a planetary organism, any foreign presence is an infection to be eliminated. And the Alliance didn't exactly try to ask nicely. We came here to extract resources without permission." The next morning brought a new horror. One of the soldiers who had been wounded in the plant attack began to change. Strange growths appeared on his skin, and his behavior became erratic. Before anyone could react, he attacked 2 other soldiers, tearing at them with inhuman strength. Eric was forced to shoot him. As the body fell, they could all see how completely it had been transformed, no longer recognizable as the species he had been. The wounds he had inflicted on the other soldiers showed signs of the same transformation beginning. "It's controlling him somehow," Olivia said as she examined the remains. "Using his body like a weapon against us." Commander Krilgzar made the difficult decision to euthanize the 2 infected soldiers before they could transform completely. The team's morale hit a new low. That night, 2 soldiers simply walked out into the darkness, surrendering to the planet rather than continuing to fight. By the 8th day, they were down to 18 survivors. Their communications equipment had been damaged in the latest attack, making it impossible to contact the Alliance for emergency extraction. "The extraction point is 17 kilometers from here," Eric told the remaining team as they gathered in the command center. "It's where the reinforcement shuttle will land in 8 days. I think we should make a run for it." 17 kilometers through that? Krilgzar gestured toward the view screen showing the landscape outside. The once open plateau was now completely transformed, covered in strange moving vegetation and crawling with unknown creatures. "We stay here, we die for certain," Eric said firmly. "We make a run for it. Some of us might make it." The room fell silent as everyone considered their options. Finally, Olivia spoke up. Eric's right. This camp is compromised. The planet knows exactly where we are and what defenses we have. Our only chance is to keep moving, stay unpredictable. After much debate, the decision was made. They would abandon the camp the next morning and attempt to reach the extraction point. Each person would carry minimal equipment and as much water and rations as possible. They would also take the quantum stabilizers. No one wanted to admit the mission was a complete failure. That night, as they prepared for their desperate journey, Eric found a quiet moment to look up at the alien stars visible through the small gaps in the vegetation that now almost completely covered their camp. Earth seems very far away right now, he said to no one in particular. Beside him, Olivia paused in checking her medical pack. We'll see it again, she said with quiet determination. Some of us, anyway. Eric wished he could believe her, but as he watched new vines slowly creeping up the sides of their shelter, he wondered if Delta 479 would allow any of them to escape its deadly embrace. Dawn broke with an unnatural red glow on the 9th day. Eric and the 17 remaining survivors prepared to leave the relative safety of their camp. Each person carried only what they absolutely needed: weapons, limited food, water, and medical supplies. The precious quantum stabilizers were divided among 6 carriers to spread the risk. Move in single file, Eric instructed the group. Minimal talking. If you see something unusual, signal silently. Don't touch any plants or standing water. Commander Krilgzar seemed to have aged years in just a few days. His gray skin had paled significantly, and all 4 of his eyes looked cloudy with stress. Still, he took position at the front of the line, determined to lead what remained of his team. The extraction point is 17 kilometers northeast, he said, checking a portable navigation device. If we maintain a steady pace without major interruptions, we can make it in 1 day. Eric and Olivia exchanged glances. They both knew that without major interruptions was an impossible hope on this planet. The team left the camp exactly as the larger of the 2 moons set below the horizon. They moved quietly through a landscape that looked nothing like the one they had landed on 9 days ago. The rusty orange vegetation had been replaced by darker, more mobile plant life. Many of the plants seemed to track their movements, turning to face them as they passed. The first kilometer went smoothly. Too smoothly. It's quiet, whispered Zex, one of the 3 remaining Draken soldiers. His scaled skin rippled with tension. No animal sounds at all. Eric had noticed the same thing. The usual background noise of Delta 479's strange wildlife had disappeared completely. The silence felt heavy. Waiting. They reached the edge of a shallow valley that cut across their path. According to their maps, they needed to descend and cross the valley floor to continue toward the extraction point. The valley was filled with a dense forest of tall, black tree-like growths. I don't like this, Olivia said quietly to Eric. Perfect place for an ambush. I agree, Eric replied. But going around would add at least 5 kilometers to our journey. Commander Krilgzar made the decision. We cross the valley. Stay alert. The descent into the valley seemed to take them into a different world. The air grew thicker, filled with spores and strange scents. The black trees towered above them, their branches intertwining to block much of the light. The ground beneath, their feet felt spongy, almost alive. They had reached the middle of the valley when the attack came, not from animals or mobile plants this time, but from the ground itself. The spongy surface suddenly liquefied, becoming a thick, tar-like substance that grabbed at their legs, trying to pull them down. Move! Get to solid ground! Eric shouted, abandoning stealth as soldiers began to sink into the suddenly fluid earth. The team scrambled forward in panic. 2 Vespari warriors were pulled under almost immediately, their light bodies no match for the powerful suction. An Ithri scientist, Kelvar, crystallized his lower body in defense, but this only seemed to anger the living ground. Tendrils of black matter rose up and wrapped around his torso, crushing his crystalline form. Eric grabbed Olivia's arm as she began to sink, pulling her toward a section of exposed rock. They made it to safety along with 8 others. 7 soldiers were lost to the valley floor, including one of the carriers with quantum stabilizers. "Keep moving," Commander Krilgzar ordered, his voice cracking with stress. "Before it adapts, again." The survivors raced through the rest of the valley, no longer concerned with stealth. They reached the far slope and climbed desperately toward higher ground. Behind them, the entire valley floor seemed to ripple and shift, as if disappointed at the escape of its prey. By midday, they had covered nearly 7 kilometers. The extraction point was still 10 kilometers away. The landscape had changed again, now featuring large rock formations that seemed to grow in front of their eyes. One soldier swore he saw a boulder move when no one was looking at it. "We need to rest," said Gorv, the engineer. His gray face was covered in sweat, his breathing labored. "Just for a few minutes." They stopped in what appeared to be a relatively safe clearing, though Eric trusted nothing on this planet now. As they took quick sips of water and checked their equipment, a low rumbling sound began beneath them. "Move!" Eric shouted, just as the ground began to shake. The rock formations around them suddenly collapsed, revealing they were hollow shells, hiding swarms of small, scorpion-like creatures. The creatures poured out by the thousands, their stingers dripping with glowing green venom. The team ran, but not everyone was fast enough. Gorv fell, covered by dozens of the creatures. His screams cut off abruptly as their venom took effect. 2 more soldiers went down moments later. The survivors reached a narrow ravine that cut across their path. On the other side lay what looked like a safer, more open area. But the ravine was too wide to jump. "There's a land bridge about 50 meters that way," said Keith, a human engineer, pointing to their right. "I can see it from here." They moved quickly to the natural bridge, a narrow strip of rock that spanned the ravine. But as they approached, they saw the bridge was covered with the same scorpion creatures as if they had been waiting. "They knew," Olivia said in disbelief. "They knew we'd come this way." Ryan, a human security officer who had been quiet for most of the journey, stepped forward. "I'll clear it," he said, pulling out 2 plasma grenades. "Wait," Eric grabbed his arm. "That's suicide." Ryan looked at him with a calm expression. "If we don't cross, we all die. This is the only way." He handed Eric his water container and spare ammunition. "Make sure somebody gets off this rock. Tell them what happened here." Before anyone could stop him, Ryan charged the bridge, firing his weapon to draw the creatures toward him. When he reached the middle, he activated both grenades. The explosion destroyed the bridge and everything on it, including Ryan. But it also cleared their path. The blast had caused part of the ravine wall to collapse, creating a steep but passable slope. "He saved us," Olivia said quietly as they made their way down the newly formed path. By evening, they had covered 12 kilometers. Only 5 kilometers remained to the extraction point, but only 7 of them were still alive. Eric, Olivia, Commander Krilzar, Zex, and 3 other soldiers. They found shelter in a shallow cave for the night. No one expected to sleep, but exhaustion eventually overcame fear. They took turns keeping watch, 2 at a time. During his watch, Eric noticed something disturbing. Tiny filaments, almost invisible, were growing from the cave floor toward the sleeping soldiers. He woke everyone immediately. "It's tracking us through the ground," he told them. "The entire surface of this planet is connected." Commander Krilzar examined the filaments with a portable scanner. "These match what Dr. Patel found in soil samples our first day here. They form a neural network throughout the planet's crust." "We can't stop to rest again," Olivia concluded. "If we stay still too long, it finds us." Despite their exhaustion, they continued through the night, moving slowly but steadily toward the extraction point. The planet seemed quieter during the darkness, though occasionally they would hear distant sounds like deep breathing or heartbeats coming from the ground beneath them. As the first light of dawn appeared on the horizon, Zex spotted something ahead. "Look," the Draken said, pointing to a flat area about a kilometer away. "That's it, the extraction point." For the first time in days, Eric felt a flicker of hope. They were close. Maybe, just maybe, some of them would make it off this world alive. The extraction point lay before them, tantalizingly close. Just 1 kilometer of open field separated the 7 survivors from their only hope of escape. The flat area had been cleared for shuttle landings when the mission was first planned. Now, after 10 days on Delta 479, the group looked at the open space with suspicion rather than relief. "It seems too easy," Eric said, studying the field through binoculars. The entire expanse glowed with a faint blue light in the early morning sun. No cover, no vegetation, nothing trying to kill us. That's not how this planet works. Commander Krilgzar nodded in agreement. "It is almost certainly a trap. But we have no choice. The extraction shuttle will land there in 6 days, and we must be there to meet it. If we rush across all at once, we might overwhelm whatever defense the planet has prepared," suggested one of the remaining soldiers, a tall alien named Grex, whose skin changed colors with his emotions. Currently, he was a worried shade of gray-green. Zex shook his scaled head. "Or we'll all die together. Better to send one person first, see what happens." A heavy silence fell over the group. No one volunteered to be the test subject. Finally, Eric spoke. "I'll go. Humans are supposedly adapted for Deathworlds, right? Let's put that to the test." Olivia grabbed his arm. "That's crazy, Eric. We should stick together. If I make it across, follow one at a time, spaced 30 seconds apart." Eric continued, ignoring her protest. "If I don't make it, well, you'll know what not to do." Before anyone could argue further, Eric began moving down the slope toward the open field. He moved slowly at first, every sense alert for danger. The others watched anxiously from their position among the rocks. Eric took his first step onto the flat ground of the extraction point. Nothing happened. He took another step, then another. Still nothing. Maybe they had been wrong. Maybe this one small area of the planet truly was safe. Then, as he reached about 20 meters into the field, the ground began to pulse with stronger blue light. The entire field rippled like water, and Eric realized with horror that the solid ground was actually a thin crust over something else entirely. "Go back," shouted Zex from the hillside. "It's a trap." But it was too late. The crust beneath Eric's feet cracked open, and dozens of tentacle-like appendages shot upward. They were fast, wrapping around his legs before he could jump away. Eric fired his weapon at them, severing several, but more kept coming. From their vantage point, the others could see what Eric couldn't. The entire field was one massive organism, something like an enormous sea anemone that had been hiding beneath a camouflaged surface. The blue glow came from millions of tiny light-producing cells in its flesh. "Help him," Olivia cried, starting down the slope with her weapon ready. Commander Krilzar grabbed her shoulder. "Wait, look!" As they watched, Eric managed to cut himself, free from several tentacles using his combat knife. He rolled away from the rupture in the ground and sprinted toward the center of the landing field. More tentacles burst through the surface around him, but he dodged between them, moving faster than they could react. "He's going to make it," Greg said, his skin turning a hopeful yellow. But the planet had one more defense. As Eric neared the center of the field, the ground there erupted completely. A massive central mass rose up, a pulsating dome of flesh surrounded by hundreds of thicker tentacles. It towered over Eric, blocking his path to the far side of the field. Eric skidded to a halt, nearly losing his balance. He fired his weapon at the central mass, but the energy blasts seemed to be absorbed with little effect. The tentacles began, closing in from all sides. From the hillside, Olivia made a decision. "Cover me," she told the others, then raced down the slope. She carried a small pack that she hadn't opened during their journey, a last resort that she'd hoped not to use. The others provided covering fire, shooting at tentacles that tried to intercept Olivia as she sprinted across the field. She reached Eric just as the circle of tentacles began to close around him. "What are you doing?" Eric shouted over the strange, wet sounds of the massive organism. Olivia didn't answer. She opened her pack and pulled out a small metal sphere, an antimatter charge powerful enough to destroy everything within a 100-meter radius. "This will clear a path," she said, setting the charge for a 30-second delay. "When it blows, run straight through the gap. Don't stop for anything." Eric stared at her. "What about you?" Olivia smiled sadly. Someone has to throw this thing right into the center. Before he could protest, she shoved him hard, pushing him toward the edge of the tentacle circle. Go. Tell them what happened. Here. Make sure no one comes back to this planet. Eric tried to grab her, but a cluster of tentacles separated them. He caught one last glimpse of Olivia running toward the central mass, the antimatter charge clutched in her hand. Run! She screamed. At him, Eric ran. Behind him, the antimatter charge detonated with a sound unlike anything he had ever heard, like reality itself was tearing apart. The shockwave threw him forward, and he felt the heat on his back even through his combat suit. He didn't look back, just kept running until he reached the far side of the field. When he finally turned around, a massive crater occupied the center of the landing area. Of Olivia and the central organism, there was no sign, but the way was clear now. The creature's tentacles had withdrawn, perhaps damaged or confused by the unprecedented attack. On the hillside, the explosion had triggered a rock slide. As Eric watched in horror, Commander Krilzar and the others were swept away by falling stones and debris. Only Zex managed to leap clear, his Draken reflexes saving him from being crushed. Zex, Eric called through his comm unit. Can you hear me? After a moment of static, the Draken's voice came through. I hear you, human. The others are gone. What now? Make your way around the edge of the field, Eric instructed. Don't step on the surface itself. Meet me on this side. But as Zex began to move, the ground beneath him suddenly shifted. A new type of plant burst from the soil, like a giant pitcher with serrated edges. Before the Draken could react, the plant closed around him. His scream cut off abruptly. Eric was alone. The last survivor of a mission that had cost 29 lives in just 10 days. For the next 6 days, Eric lived in the small cave he found near the extraction point. He didn't sleep, didn't stop moving for more than a few minutes at a time. The planet sent new horrors every day. Burrowing parasites, toxic mists, creatures that mimicked human voices to lure him out. But Eric survived. He had made a promise to Olivia, to Ryan, to all the others who had died so that someone could escape this planet and warn the Alliance. On the 16th day, the extraction shuttle arrived precisely on schedule. It hovered over the landing field, sensors scanning for a safe touchdown point. Eric used his emergency beacon to signal from his position at the edge of the field. The shuttle adjusted course and landed near him. Eric approached cautiously, weapon ready, half expecting the shuttle to be another trick of the planet. But the door opened to reveal a standard Alliance crew, looking shocked at finding only one survivor. Staff Sergeant Eric Mason, he identified himself as he boarded. Only survivor, get us off this planet now. As the shuttle lifted off, Eric looked down at the world that had killed everyone he had spent the last 16 days with. From above, Delta 479 looked almost peaceful. Rusty orange continents, purple oceans, copper polar caps. Beautiful and deadly. In his pocket, he clutched a data crystal containing all the information they had gathered. Naya's initial research, Olivia's theories about the planet's neural network, evidence of the coordinated attacks, everything the Alliance would need to understand what they were dealing with. 3 months later, Eric stood before the Galactic Alliance Council. His right arm had been replaced with a prosthetic after the planet's organisms had done too much damage to save it. His eyes now had flecks of amber in them, a lasting effect of exposure to Delta 479's environment. Delta 479 is not just a death world, he told the assembled representatives. It is a single planet-spanning organism that perceives any foreign presence as an infection to be eliminated. Each attack teaches it. Each death makes it stronger. Many council members dismissed his testimony. They saw only a traumatized survivor, not a warning. But some listened. Some understood the true danger. As Eric left the council chambers, Admiral Laura Bennett approached him. We're sending another mission, she informed him. Larger, better equipped, with specific countermeasures based on your experience. Eric shook his head. You still don't understand. The planet remembers us now. It will be ready. He walked away, leaving the Admiral staring after him. In his blood, he could still feel something from Delta 479, something that had become part of him. In his dreams, he heard the planet calling to him across the void of space, and sometimes he could have sworn it was getting closer.